Hello, class. Professor Quigley, and I am super excited. It's week 4. I am so excited because I get to talk to you about loops. Loops, while they can be very powerful, they can be confusing. Many of you are going to get real frustrated, and you're going to email me questions. And I guarantee you, you're going to be emailing me those questions if you did not watch this video all the way to the very end. I am going to explain everything you need to know about loops so that way you can ace the discussion threads. Moreover, I'm going to show you why it is that I love to hire lazy software developers, lazy software engineers, computer programmers. I don't care what you call them these days. If they're lazy, they're the ones I want to hire because they figure out how to do the most amount of work by doing the least amount of work possible. It's true. You can get paid a lot of money for being lazy, and I'm about to show you how. All right. Well, the reason why software engineers can be lazy and get a lot of work done is because they understand how loops work. So I want to take the first couple minutes here before I show you a loop and actually explain to you the concept. And I love how Zybooks this week talks about a baby. Because if you were like me, a working adult going through school, you know what it's like to need that baby to get to sleep so you can stay up late and get your schoolwork done. Um, One of the best techniques that I found to get my baby to fall asleep is to take a drive around the neighborhood. Now, whether you realize it or not, every time you started that drive around the neighborhood, you always started with a decision. You asked yourself a true or false question. You said, "Is my baby sleeping?" If the answer is true, you didn't do anything. You didn't take a loop around the neighborhood because your baby was sleeping. There was nothing for you to do. So that whole looping process never even started. If you asked yourself, "Is my baby sleeping?" and the answer is false, you hopped in the car and you took a drive around the neighborhood. Most of you followed that same circle over and over and over again, but every time you got close to your neighborhood or close to your house, you would turn around, look in the back seat. Hopefully your kid was in a car seat. Promise me your kid was in a car seat. Uh, I digress. Anyways, when you get close to your house, you would look in that back seat and you would look at your baby and you would ask yourself that true or false question. Is my baby sleeping? If the answer was true, you got to go home and you got to start that delicate process of getting that kid in the crib without waking up. Now, if the baby woke up, you would ask yourself again, "Is my baby sleeping?" The answer is false. You hop in that car and you do the whole thing over and over again. That's the power of loops. You can do the same thing over and over and over again until that condition changes to a condition that you want it to be. So let's actually flowchart a loop out together. So if you remember our analogy that we've been working with since week 1, we've been building an area calculator, and we had all these steps that we followed. And then last week we added our decision here where we wanted to do something differently if the area of the room was over 200 square feet versus we outputted something different if it was less than 100 square foot. So all I did this week is I added a new variable up top. So in a rectangle where we declare our processes, I want to declare a variable called keep going, and I want to give it a starting value of yes, because I want to assume that this person opened up this application, they want to at least measure one room. So we go through that process. However, rather than ending our application down here at the outputs, I want this application to continue up here, and I want it to ask the user a question whenever it gets finished measuring that first room. I want to ask the user, "Do you want to keep going?" Now, I'm going to write a line of computer code that says, does keep going equal yes? If the user does want to keep going, that means true. We do want to measure another room, and we're going to follow this whole process again. We're going to keep looping as long as keep going equals yes. As long as that statement is true, we're going to keep measuring rooms over and over and over again. Now, when the user says, when they type on the screen no, that's going to mean that this Boolean expression here is going to be false. So when keep going no longer equals yes, that's when we're going to exit the application. Because remember, I told you, the best programmers are the lazy ones. They are the ones that constantly always are thinking about ways they can do things faster. So if I said I need to measure 10 rooms, I don't want them to write the same lines of code 10 times. I want them, and these are the lines of code that I'm talking about. Imagine you had to write every one of these lines of code out just to measure one room, and you wanted to measure 10 rooms. Do you really want to write this out 10 times? Now, some of you might be thinking, well, I'm just going to hold copy, and I'm going to hit paste, and I'm just going to just paste it a whole bunch of times. Well, here's the problem. What happens if I want to change the way we calculate the area of the room? What if I want to change that and find a more precise way to calculate the area? That means when I change that, I have to update line 23 and I have to go update line 48. I don't want to do that. Um, a lazy developer, the reason why I want to hire them is because they are constantly finding ways to do less but deliver more. So what they do is they're going to take all these lines of code and they're going to wrap them in a loop. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to declare a new variable where I say string keep going equals yes. Then I'm going to go ahead and start writing my while loop. So I'm going to say while, and then in the parentheses is where you put your condition. Now, my condition is going to ask the question, does keep going equal yes? Now you notice the difference there, how if it's two equal signs, and I'll just do one here. If I do one, Visual Studio is going to complain. It's going to do like what Microsoft Word does, and it's going to put a red line, and it's going to say, hey, I can't take the string value here and assign it to a variable and use it in this Boolean expression. That way it's wrong. So it's going to ask me, or it's actually going to keep complaining until I put two equal signs, because then it knows what I'm doing. It says, does keep going equal yes? So when when line 15 executes, it's going to say, hey, does whatever value I have in the keep going variable, is it the same as this right here? Yes. So basically, if keep going equals yes, then it's going to go inside here to line 17. So in Zybooks, here's what I'm going to do. Let me, hold on. I get ahead of myself. So line 20 to 39, I'm going to hold control and hit X to cut that out. And I'm going to paste that inside the loop. So what I'm saying is, just like in Zybooks, how when you write your expression or your question up here and then you indent, the reason why Zybooks is having you do that is because it's a real common thing to do in many different languages. Now, you might not have to write the braces here, like C# requires you to do, but just make sure every line of code that you want to execute to be a part of that loop, it's indented. So let's go ahead and run this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop a breakpoint here on line 13. And remember, a breakpoint just means I want the application to stop so I can follow along and see the sequence that it's going to follow. So I'm going to hit run. It's going to start up here. And the first thing it's going to say is this keep going. Notice how it equals null. But when I hit F11 to go to the next line of code, now when I mouse over, I can see keep going now equals yes, because we assigned yes to the value or to the variable keep going. So on line 15, it's going to ask a true or false question. It's going to say, does keep going equal yes? And if I mouse over the variable keep going, it does equal yes. So since these two equal each other, that condition is true. And so because it's true, it's going to step into my loop here. And so I'm going to exit out of that breakpoint. And I am going to drop another breakpoint here on line 39. So that way we'll go ahead and run the application, and then when it gets to line 39, I want it to stop because I want to see what the program's going to do next. So I'm going to hit continue, and it's going to ask me what is the length of the room. I'm going to type in the room is 10. What is the width of the room? I'm going to type in 12. Wow, that is a big room. The area of the room is 120 square feet. And notice it already asked me what is the length of the room again. So if I type in 100, actually, let's do a smaller room this time. I'll type in 5. The length of the room is 5. Now it says the area of the room is 25 square feet. But like you notice it keeps looping over and over and over again. And that's because we didn't do what we said we were going to do in our flowchart. In our flowchart, we said that once we get finished with all this process, we are going to check if the user wants to keep going. We have to ask the user, do you want to keep going? Because if we don't ever ask that question and update the variable that we keep checking, our loop is going to go over and over and over and over again, and it's never going to end. We call that an infinite loop. So it's very important that inside this loop here, so in our indented code, if you're in Zybooks, we have to ask the user that question. So I'm going to say console.writeLine, and I'm going to say, I got to put it in quotes because it's a string. I'm going to do that new line character, and I'm going to say, do you want to measure another room. Then I'm going to give them a little hint to say yes or no. Now, I'm going to say keep going is going to equal. So I'm only using one equal sign because I'm not comparing a value to another value. I actually want keep going to equal whatever it was that they typed in. Now, in C#, if you want to do get next input, you do console.readline. So basically that means it's going to read literally that line of text that they typed into our program. Then it's going to store it into keep going. So if you were in Zybooks, this is no different than you saying keep going equals get next input. So let's go ahead and run this application here. So what is the length of the room? I'm going to say the room is 5. What is the width of the room? I'm going to say it is 7. The area of the room is 35 square feet. Do you want to measure another room? Yes or no? I'm going to type in yes. Now, if I move this off to the side, you'll see, oops, I don't want to do that. No, bring me back to how I was. It stopped over here on line 40. So line 40 is basically the last line of that loop. So rather than what we learned, because remember what we learned in week 1 that sequences, the program's going to go line 30, 31, 32. So you would expect that when it goes to 40, it would jump to 41, 42. Well, that's not the case in loops, because what we're saying is I want it to keep looping over and over and over again. So when it reaches the end of that loop from line 40, it's not going to go to 41. It's going to jump all the way back up here to line 15. And it's going to check that question. Just like we were looping around the neighborhood when we turn to the back seat and we say, is our baby still sleeping? That's what we're doing here. It's going to check and say, does keep going equal yes? Over here, if you remember on the screen, if I bring this back over here, come on, mouse, stick with me. Do you want to measure another room? I typed in yes. So because I typed in yes, keep going equals yes. So this is true. It knows that I still want to keep going. So it's going to go back into that loop. And then it's going to keep going as often as I do that. So what is the length of the room? I'm going to say 12. What is the width of the room? I'm going to say it's 100. Wow, that's a big room, 1,200 square feet. Do I want to keep going? I'm going to hit yes. I'll remove this breakpoint. Actually, I'll just keep going. So now I do want to keep going because remember what I told you? I only wrote this calculation once, but yet this can go as many times no matter how many rooms the user has. So this is what I mean when I say that I can have lazy people do a lot of work, because this is an application that you would think if you're measuring 100 rooms would take 100 times longer to write. Not so with a loop. I just did it once, and then I just did a little decision, and I just constantly kept asking that same question to tell the computer to keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. So let's end this video because I know it's getting kind of long. So what is the length of the room? I'm going to say it is 8. What is the width of the room? The width of the room, I'm going to say 8. The area of the room is 64 square feet. Do you want to continue? I'm going to type in no, and I'm going to click enter. Now, if I move this off to the side, line 40, just because I typed in no doesn't mean it's going to keep going. It still has to check that condition. So I'm going to hit F11. It goes back up here. And now if I mouse over keep going, you can see the variable keep going has a value of no, because I asked the user, I did keep going equals get next input, and the user, which was me in this video, typed in no. So when I ask the question, does keep going equal yes, that is false. So now it jumps out of that loop. So that loop, it exits out of these lines of code. So that way when I hit continue now, my program essentially stopped. And since I had a breakpoint there, let me remove this so you can kind of see it in real time here. So I'm going to stop this, run the whole application again, this time without any fancy code stopping, so you can kind of see what we built together. What is the length of the room? 10. What is the width of the room? 10. The area of the room is 100 square feet. Do you want to continue? I'm going to hit yes. Now I'm going to do my second room, which is 8. What is the width? 8. It gives me 64 square feet. Now this time I'm going to say no. Boom. My application exited. Now, I know this video was a little long, and I know Strayer keeps telling me I got to make these videos 1 minute. Otherwise, you're not going to watch them. But I want to challenge you to actually watch these videos, because these videos Remember, you're not sitting with me for 4 hours in a classroom where I get to explain all this stuff to you. So for week 4, I essentially just showed you everything there is to know to be an expert in about 15 minutes. So I'm hoping that this video was useful. I'm hoping that I see you in the discussion threads reciting something from this video, because this is literally what we're talking about, while loops. So if you have any questions on this, or if you have any other questions about how you can become a highly paid software engineer who gets paid a lot to do the least amount of work possible, shoot me up. Actually, sorry, I said that wrong. Don't shoot me up. Email me, I should clarify. Email me and get with me, because I'd love to start giving you tips and tricks on how to not only pass this class, but to actually break into the career field so you can get a real job before graduation. Take care.